We've all seen them, right? Those Karen meltdown videos. You laugh, shake your head, maybe even hit share. You never think it's going to be your family barbecue, though. Your perfectly planned day of sun, sausages, and good times turning into, well, a total circus. But yep, it happened to us. And trust me, the wildest part wasn't just the yelling over a bit of grill smoke. It was what went down after we thought the main event was over. It was set up to be one of those perfect Saturdays. You know the kind, sun shining, not a cloud in sight, just begging for a family barbecue. And when I say family, I mean the whole crew was there. Aunt Carol brought her legendary potato salad. Uncle Mike was playing grill master and doing a decent job. I'll give him that. The cousins were running wild in the yard, and you could just hear laughter mixed with the sound of burgers sizzling. Your typical, happy, slightly messy family gathering. We were all set up in our backyard, our usual spot for countless get-togethers, our little slice of peace. Little did we know that peace was about to get shattered by a meltdown of epic proportions. Seriously, none of us saw it coming. A perfect day for chaos. That amazing smell of charcoal was wafting through the air. You know, the one that instantly makes you think of summer and good times. We had some music on, not too loud, just a nice background vibe. The kids were going crazy with a water balloon fight, and their happy shrieks were echoing all over. My sister, Sarah, and I were just chatting, catching up on things, while Dad was carefully lining up corn on the cob on the grill. It felt perfect, like something out of a movie. We were in our own happy little world, totally clueless about the drama about to unfold right next door. This backyard was our haven, you know? The place where we escaped all the usual stress. It was just one of those normal, wonderful days you don't really appreciate until someone comes along and tries to wreck it. We had no idea what kind of entitlement was about to march right into our lives. So, the first hint that our perfect Saturday was about to go sideways was pretty small. Just a curtain twitching in the house next door. New neighbors had moved in a few months before. Pretty quiet, kept to themselves. We'd exchanged the usual polite waves and nods. Her actual name, we found out later, in way too much detail, was Susan. But for this story, and considering how she acted, Karen just fits better, you know? Anyway, she pops up at the fence, arms crossed, with this super deep frown that looked like it was stuck there. "Excuse me," she calls out, and her voice just sliced right through our music and laughter. Dad, being the friendly guy he is, turns the music down and heads over. "Hi there. Everything okay?" he asks, with his usual warm smile. "Is that smoke?" she asks, waving a hand kind of vaguely towards our grill. She looked totally offended, like we were up to something terrible. "You're grilling? Today?" Dad, clearly a bit surprised, just goes, yeah, it's a barbecue. Great day for it." "Well, the smoke is drifting," she says, sniffing the air like she's in a bad play. "It's a nuisance." "A nuisance? The smell of a barbecue? Seriously?" We all kind of looked at each other, confused. This wasn't some factory chimney. It was a Weber grill with burgers and hot dogs. But folks, this was just the warm-up act. This was the tiny puff of wind before the full-blown tornado of crazy hit. That first complaint, it seemed so small, but it was the first crack. We tried to be nice, of course. Dad told her the wind would probably change. We'd be careful. We figured, okay, that's that. Man, were we wrong. Karen goes crazy. About 20 minutes later, after a really awkward stretch of quiet, Karen was back. This time, she was on her phone, talking super loud in that voice people use when they want everyone in a 5-mile radius to know they're being wronged. "Yes, I need to report a disturbance." She's practically yelling, pacing her yard but staring straight at us. "My neighbors are creating a hazardous smoke situation. It's an inferno waiting to happen. There are children here. My children." Just so, her kids were teenagers and inside her house, probably with headphones on, totally clueless. This is where things went from weird to completely off the rails real fast. Her story kept getting wilder. The hazardous smoke suddenly became acrid fumes that were choking her. Our little family grill? Oh no, that was now a raging fire pit that was endangering the entire neighborhood. You should have seen the looks on my family's faces. Uncle Mike, bless him, tried to talk some sense into her. Ma'am, it's just a barbecue. It's perfectly legal and safe. That reasonable comment just seemed to throw gasoline on her fire. Don't you tell me what's legal, she shrieked, her voice actually cracking. I know my rights. This is a residential area. You people are being incredibly inconsiderate. The audacity, having such a flammable event so close to my property. My cousin, who's always ready with a joke, muttered, Flammable event? Did we invite a dragon by mistake? Mom shot him a look, but a few of the younger ones definitely snickered. Karen, though, not amused. Her face was turning this alarming shade of red. She started pointing, jabbing her finger in the air like it was a weapon. I see what you're doing. You're doing this deliberately to annoy me. You're probably cooking illegal substances. Illegal substances? On a barbecue? The accusation was so nuts it was almost funny, but she was dead serious. This was peak Karen, turning a normal afternoon into this huge drama. She was creating total chaos, and it didn't feel very funny to us right then. Then came the grand finale. She dramatically announced, I've called the fire department and the police. They'll sort you people out. She puffed her chest out, this smug, triumphant look on her face, like she fully expected us to just collapse in fear, put out our grill, and beg her to forgive us. The thought that the authorities might show up and find, nothing wrong didn't seem to cross her mind. By now, some of the younger cousins had sneakily started filming on their phones. Not to be jerks, but the whole thing was so bizarre, it felt like it needed to be recorded. Karen spots the phones and gets even louder. Oh, you think this is funny? You think you can intimidate me by filming? I'll sue you for harassment. I know the law. She was practically shaking with anger, her voice hitting a pitch that could probably break glass. So we waited. The burgers were definitely goners by this point, but nobody wanted to go near the grill. The fun party vibe? Totally gone. Replaced by this thick, awkward silence and just disbelief. Sure enough, about 15 minutes later, a fire truck, followed by a police car, rolls down our quiet street. No flashing lights or sirens, but still pretty imposing. Karen rushes out to meet them, launching into this whole speech about the uncontrolled blaze, the toxic fumes, and how aggressive we were being. The firefighters, to their credit, looked completely unimpressed. One of them, this big guy with a really patient look on his face, walked over, took one glance at our standard Weber grill with its gently smoking coals, looked at the hot dogs and burgers, and then looked back at Karen. You could almost see him sigh internally. He calmly explained to her that this was, in fact, just a normal barbecue, not some five-alarm fire. The police officer, meanwhile, had a quiet chat with my dad, who explained our side. Then the officer went over to Karen. We couldn't hear everything, but we saw her waving her arms around, still talking loudly. The officer, though, stayed calm, just occasionally shaking his head. Sometimes you hear about people getting warnings or even tickets for wasting emergency services time with calls like this. We didn't see him write a ticket, but he definitely didn't look happy with her. The immediate aftermath, after the cameras stopped rolling, after about 10 minutes of her trying to convince them we were a major threat, and failing, the firefighters and the police officer got ready to leave. The lead firefighter gave my dad this sympathetic nod. Enjoy your barbecue, sir, he said, loud enough for Karen to hear. The officer gave Karen one last, stern look and said a few more words before getting back in his car. As the emergency vehicles drove off, it got super quiet. Karen just stood there, looking completely deflated. All that bluster was gone. That smug, "I gotcha" look, replaced with something that looked a whole lot like pure embarrassment. She'd played her trump card, called in the big guns, and they basically told her she was being ridiculous. The neighbors who'd been peeking out their windows were now just openly staring. The show was over, and she was a star, all right, just not in the way she'd planned. She didn't say another word, just turned around, walked stiffly back to her house, and vanished inside. The curtain twitched one more time, and then nothing. The phones that had been recording were slowly put away. We all just kind of stared at each other, half in shock, half just unable to believe what happened. Uncle Mike finally broke the silence. "Well," he said, walking over to the sadly overcooked burgers. "Anyone still hungry?" That broke the tension, and a few nervous laughs went around. The viral chaos she was hoping for had totally fizzled out into this pretty sad display. Pretty wild, right? Can you even imagine? If you've ever had a crazy encounter like this, or if a neighbor tried to shut down your good times, let me know in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear your stories. And hey, if you're finding this story as wild as we did living through it, do me a solid and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Now, the title of this video isn't just Karen Goes Crazy. It's that she regrets it. And oh boy, did that regret start to kick in. The first hit was, obviously, the major embarrassment in front of the emergency crew and all the neighbors watching. But it didn't end there. What Karen didn't know was that one of my younger cousins is a bit of social media whiz. He put together this short, pretty tasteful, but still hilarious video of her biggest meltdown moments. He was careful not to show her face clearly, so no doxing or anything, but her voice and those crazy accusations were totally unmistakable. He posted it on a local community group page with a simple caption. "Anyone else have an exciting Saturday barbecue?" That post just blew up. Within hours, hundreds of comments. People recognized the street. Even though her face wasn't super clear, folks in the immediate area knew exactly who it was. The comments went from totally amused to pretty outraged at how she acted. We started seeing things like Barbecue Becky Jr. and Permit Patty's cousin popping up. That local community page, usually all about lost cats and bake sales, was suddenly all about entitled behavior. The online roasting was pretty intense. We heard through the neighborhood grapevine, you know how that works, that she was completely mortified. Her husband, who sounds like a much more reasonable guy, was apparently furious with her. Not just for the scene she made, but for making their family the laughingstock of the area. Some people who knew her from a local club or the PDA started kind of avoiding her. Turns out, being that neighbor who calls the fire department over a barbecue actually has some real-world social consequences. The real regret. A glimmer of change? A few days later, something pretty unexpected happened. My dad was out mowing the lawn, and Karen's husband came over. He looked super uncomfortable, but also like he had something he needed to say. And he apologized. Like a lot. He said his wife had been under a ton of stress, that she knew she'd totally overreacted, and that she was deeply embarrassed by what she did and how the community reacted. He even offered to pay for the ruined burgers, which my dad politely turned down. According to her husband, the online fallout and people kind of giving her the cold shoulder had been a serious wake-up call for her. She just hadn't expected how much people would disapprove. It wasn't just about being wrong. It was about everyone knowing and talking about her as that person. He mentioned she was especially upset about the Barbecue Becky stuff. Apparently, she'd looked up what that meant. Did Karen herself ever apologize to us directly? Not right then, no. But the message through her husband felt pretty genuine. It seemed like the regret wasn't just about getting caught or shamed, but maybe, just maybe, a slow realization of how completely out of line she'd been. It's one thing to lose it. It's another to have your whole neighborhood gossiping about it, and for your actions to become this local warning story. Our family's reflection, the lingering taste. For our family, that day became legendary. We call it the Great Burger War of 24. We can laugh about it now, mostly, but at the time, it was honestly pretty upsetting. It kind of ruined what should have been a really happy day. My parents especially felt singled out and a bit uneasy in their own backyard for a while after. It's a weird feeling when you realize how easily someone else's completely irrational behavior can just destroy your peace. It definitely got us talking, though, about entitlement, how quick some people are to blow things up, and about the power of community, both the good and the bad sides. The support from other neighbors was really nice. Some of them dropped by over the next few days just to say they couldn't believe what Karen had done. It was a good reminder that for every person acting out, there are way more reasonable, kind people out there. That whole crazy, stressful incident actually ended up bringing our little corner of the neighborhood a bit closer, all kind of united in a massive eye roll. We also talked about the filming. Even though it felt like we had to document the craziness at the time, it made us think about online shaming and what impact it can have. Even without her face clearly shown, her story was out there. It's a tricky line to walk. The bigger picture, more than just a barbecue asterisk. You know, these Karen things you see, whether it's at a barbecue like ours, in a park, or some store, they often make you think about bigger stuff, right? Like privilege, how people act in communities, and when folks try to throw authority around that they don't really have. Remember that barbecue Becky thing at Lake Merritt? That got a whole lot of people talking about race and who gets to decide what's okay in public places. Our little neighborhood drama wasn't on that level, but it felt like a smaller version of the same kind of entitlement, that same over-the-top reaction to people just trying to enjoy themselves. It really shows how easily a totally normal thing can be twisted into a problem by someone who's determined to see it that way, or maybe just needs to be in control. And with social media now, these things can blow up from a private argument to a public show in seconds, and that has real effects on everyone. It's this weird mix of being kind of hilariously chaotic, but also having real, emotional consequences. So yeah, that's how our family barbecue went from sizzling burgers to full-on shrieking, all thanks to one neighbor who really picked the wrong day and the wrong barbecue to have a meltdown. It was a crazy experience, full of ridiculous accusations, a totally unnecessary emergency call-out, and a surprising amount of neighborhood drama. But in the end, it really did seem like Karen regretted it. Not just because she got called out online and by the neighbors, but hopefully because she actually realized how disruptive and, frankly, nasty she'd been. That bit of viral chaos she accidentally kicked off ended up being a quick and pretty tough lesson for her. It just goes to show, sometimes the wildest stories aren't just on the internet. They can happen right in your own backyard. And while we definitely wouldn't want to go through it again, it's a story that's going to be told at our family get-togethers for years. I can already hear Uncle Mike adding more dramatic details every time. Thanks so much for hanging in there with me for that whole roller coaster. If you got a kick out of this story of barbecue justice, or if you just enjoy hearing about Karens facing the music, definitely hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you don't miss my next story time. I have a feeling this won't be the last crazy thing to happen around here. And seriously, I'd love to hear your own Karen stories in the comments. Reading them makes me feel a little less like I'm the only one dealing with this stuff. Stay safe out there, grill responsibly, and I hope all your BBQs are drama-free.